J.D. Vance just said this about you, and these are his words, quote, he compared you to a really bad impression of Barack Obama. What is your response to that?
Is that what he said? That's great. Barack Obama was probably our most gifted orator of my time, so it's kind of a weird insult, I guess. But look, I'll say this about J.D. Vance. It is real hard being honest with the American people when you're not being honest with yourself. J.D. Vance is a total phony baloney. He is the most inorganic candidate I think I have ever seen on the national stage. He doesn't know what he believes, and that is why it is impossible for him to articulate a coherent message to the American people, because he doesn't believe it.
That's Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro dunking hard on J.D. Vance without even mentioning couches in any way, and demonstrating vividly why he's on the short list to be Kamala Harris's running mate. The contest to be the VP nominee, a.k.a. the Veep Stakes, are reaching their final days, with the formal vetting process having reportedly been concluded, putting the decision squarely into the hands of Kamala Harris. Got to make this choice on her own. She'll take some advice, but it's up to her. NBC News reporting that the short list has been narrowed to just a few people. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, as we just mentioned, Josh Shapiro, Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, and the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Harris expected to meet with her top contenders in the next 72 hours. They have an event scheduled for Tuesday. We should know by then. We are back with Michael, Christina, and Rev. And Michael Steele, we left off with you. I want to just do a little Veep Stakes. The Veep Stakes is always one of those perennial, quadrennial rituals. Normally, it's tedious because, like, who cares? And also, we don't really know. And also, it takes many months. In this case, it's like a no-huddle Veep Stakes. It's like you get, no time, and you got J.D. Vance, who has become a real liability for Donald Trump. So it's possible, given the amount of space that Vance is taking up, that this selection will actually matter. And this debate will be must-see TV between the two number twos. So I ask you, in the language of ESPN, who you got?
Well, you set it up right, my friend. It is sort of an intensive kind of moment where you're sort of focused in on the state of the play, and you're seeing it in a very different light than we would have in a traditional setting, even as we saw with Donald Trump, who tried to make his selection more like a form of The Apprentice. You do have a much more clarifying moment right in front of the vice president, which will make this must-see TV for sure.
Michael, who you got? Who you got?
Well, that's my way of saying, does it really matter? No, I mean, I think, look, I mean, she's got a great crop. I mean, that list that you just put up there will stand up against anything on the Republican side, meaning J.D. Vance.
I don't disagree with that, but if
Donald Trump itself.
If she asked you for your advice, who would you say?
Probably the governor of Pennsylvania, because for me it's about strategery, and it's about how you network the pieces together to get you the ultimate goal, which is the White House. And what's the most important play? It's Pennsylvania. The second question, if you don't want to go down that road, is okay, if not him, who gets me Pennsylvania? Because it's the largest piece in that blue wall puzzle. Of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, even when you throw in places like Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia. So that's where the thinking is. I know there's some questions around that. I think those questions are ignorant and not very politically savvy. I think the vice president needs to come out with an asymmetrical play that goes counter to the typical traditional grain in politics. Which some people, from what I hear around town, have put out there, which would move her off as someone like Shapiro. I think he's strong, and if not him, then I'm going with my man Kelly out in Arizona, because I think he still gets you a little bit of Pennsylvania because of who he is and his background.
Christina, Michael's here alluding to the notion that there is only one of these candidates that has had a campaign of some kind run against him, and that's the sort of Genocide Josh campaign. No Genocide Josh is what it's called. It's quite small in terms of actual numbers, but in terms of making noise online and other places, it's made some. He is very much in the same place in terms of policy that the Biden-Harris administration has been on the question of Israel. But he has criticized some of the more violent protesters on campuses in a pretty forceful way, and that has upset some people. There are those who say that in Michigan, where there is a large Arab American constituency, that putting Shapiro on the ticket would cost Kamala Harris votes. I say all that. That is the debate that's going on out there. I'm not taking a side in it right now. With that in mind and everything else in mind, who you got?
I had Roy Cooper, and he unfortunately dropped out of the race. So I will tell you, I've worked at Emily's List. I've worked at Emily's List for quite a while. I'm not used to picking men. So I'm just going to say I have whoever the vice president thinks will campaign and govern with her the best. I think to Michael's point, this is a great moment of momentum, and we have a stacked bench. I will put any one of those guys up against J.D. Vance, bless his heart. They've already shown that they can campaign. They've already, done great jobs in their current roles. And so I think any of them would be a great choice. But fundamentally, this excitement that we've seen, the money, all the Zooms, all of the registration of voters, that's come from Kamala Harris. And that's who people are going to elect at the end of the day.
Yes, and that's always the case. Sorry, Christina, I didn't mean to cut you off. No,
I said, how's that for a dodge?
Yeah, that's a dodge. So I was going to say artful, even more artful than Michael Steele's. Rev's not going to do that to me, though. He's going to tell me who he's really got. And look, I mentioned the Shapiro thing only because two things are true. Both campaigns consider Pennsylvania their tipping state. There's going to be an enormous amount of attention, money, focus on Pennsylvania no matter what. That Josh Shapiro would be in the very top tier of considerations was clear. It's also the case that some on the left are putting pressure on Kamala Harris to not pick him. And, this pick set is as much as anything a reflection of the values and vision of the nominee. Who do they think they can govern with? What message are they trying to send? So talk to me about what you think the choices that she faces, and again, if you were advising her, what you would tell her to do.
If I were advising her, I would say, and I've been around the last 2 or 3 Democratic administrations, is that one, you have to pick somebody with shared vision. Secondly, somebody that you can work with, that you and them have a chemistry. And thirdly, somebody can help you win. Those 3 elements ought to be the things she considers, because you could win a state and have somebody that is incongruous with working with you that you're going to have to live with for 4 years, or that is going to be arguing and fighting with you on your vision. And no one really has to advise on that. She was vice president for the last 3.5 years. If anyone knows what to look for in a vice president and what the job entails, it's the vice president. So I would not advise her to do anything but think about how you were chosen. Think about what you had to do. Think about what it was like, and then choose somebody that could fit that model that you had to fit.
The vice presidential debate is going to be a big moment. J.D. Vance has broken out of the pigeonhole that we put. You hope when you pick one, they just disappear. He's not disappeared. And I will say that I think that, you think about political athletes. Who do you really want to see? Well, Shapiro, Walz, and Pete Buttigieg. Those are the 3 that will be, for me, must-see TV if any of them go against
I was in presidential debates when I ran in 2004. I would do something that I'm not known customarily to do. If I were debating J.D. Vance, if I was any of the 3 you named, I would cede all my time to him, and he would win hands down. I'd let him just fumble, mumble, and show the world how idiotic it was to choose him. I would say I cede my time, give him my 3 minutes. Talk, Vance. And if people hear him for an hour, there's no way they would vote for Trump, Vance.
Yeah.